Welcome inside the collective. It is September 30th. It's a Tuesday, and it's officially week 5 of this NFL regular season. I'm Bobby Trossett, joined alongside my co-hosts, Jeff Zrebeck of The Athletic and Cole Jackson of Road Graders right here on YouTube. And, of course, we're all on Twitter. You guys can find us across all platforms, and we appreciate you for being with us tonight. It's brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. The collective is growing quickly, gentlemen. We're rolling, and it's all thanks to everybody who shows up on Tuesday night. So needless to say, if you could on the way in, please like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll get to as many super chats as possible tonight because we know that people have things to say, much like my two panelists do right now as well. Jeff just got in yesterday from Kansas City, and of course, the disaster that was week 4 for the Ravens. We're going to talk injuries. We're going to talk about Lamar specifically. Where do the Ravens go from here? This is a state of the Ravens, if you will. And guys, it feels pretty strange to be having one of those through 4 weeks, but that is where this team stands. 1-3, Houston looming, a home game. The Rams looming after that at home prior to a week 7 bye week. So without further ado, let's jump right in. We're going to cover a lot and take a peek ahead, of course, in the last few minutes for the Texans. But Jeff, first, I mean, like I said, you just got home from this Kansas City trip. I think we probably should start with where this team is in terms of what it's going to field come Sunday personnel-wise, because there's a laundry list of not only topics that we're going to address tonight, but a laundry list of players that are banged up at the moment.
Yeah, I don't remember how many Pro Bowlers the Ravens had last year. They had a couple of guys added late, but you can assume pretty much every one of them is not going to play Sunday. That's kind of how it looks. Obviously, you have the big one's Lamar Jackson, and I don't think I have a handle on the severity of the hamstring injury, but it's a hamstring injury, and he was clearly limited and hurt and walking out of the locker room Sunday. And usually when you have a hamstring injury, you're going to miss some time. And I know Brian Wacker, the Baltimore Sun, reported he's likely going to miss Sunday. I would concur there. I think they're leaving the light on for him just in case. I don't think they're completely ready to just say he's out, but I think they pretty much expect that's the likelihood given the nature of his injury. And, and he's just going to be the only one. I don't think we'll see Marlon Humphrey on Sunday. I mean, we've all seen how much Patrick Ricard's calf injuries limited him and how long he's been out with it. I don't think we'll see Roquan Smith. Obviously, Matabike and Washington are already on IR. I think the two guys, Wiggins, I'm not sure of yet, but I think the two guys who could be back and would be big would be Kyle Van Noy and Travis Jones. And at this point, they just need productive bodies, and they don't have enough of those right now. It's a fun thought to start 5 rookies on defense, but then when you realize you need to win this game and you're playing in also a desperate team with a very good defense, it's not as fun. They need to find a way to get something done. And if you could get Jones and Van Noy back, maybe that settles things a little bit, but man, it's going to be a pretty bleak picture Sunday. They have to find a way with what they have. And, I think the thought process, guys, has to be, let's try to steal a game. And if we go in the bye week 2-4, we'll come back after the bye in week 7, and we'll probably get 5 or 6 guys back by then. And then we're going to have to go on a roll with a much lighter schedule. I think that's the thought process now. It's a shame it's come to that already when the calendar's just turning to October here shortly. But, you play the hand that's dealt, and they've been very healthy the last couple of years. They're getting hit hard this year, and we're going to see the results of that Sunday. They have to find a way to scrap out a win with, I don't want to call it your B team because that's disrespectful to some of these guys, but you're probably going to be without 8-9 starters Sunday.
Yeah. Hey, Cole, if somebody were to ask you what the state of your team that you ride or die with is, how would you answer it at this point?
Bleak. The answer is bleak. When we did our preview show right before the season kicked off, we talked about this September schedule. This wasn't necessarily a surprise that September was going to be tough. They had, 3, and even if you count Houston and the Rams before the early bye week, they had 5 of the first 6 games against playoff teams from last year. So, anytime you're getting into that situation, it's going to be tough games. The Ravens have, over the last few years, kind of started slow. and then they've really peaked and they've kind of ran through the back end of their schedule. So, they've been able to live with some tougher starts. But when you start stacking up injuries, like Jay-Z kind of nailed it, they haven't dealt with injuries like this in like 2021 comes to mind when, but everybody was kind of falling at the end of the year rather than the start. I'd have to go back to like 2015. They started 3-7 before Joe got hurt with the ACL injury. So it has that kind of 2015 vibe where the record's not going well. And, go back to 2015, they still had some high expectations. If they beat the Patriots in 2014 in the playoffs, they might be looking at a Super Bowl in 2014. Like I thought the Ravens were that solid. They just had that tough game against New England in the playoffs. So, a lot of similarities going on with kind of 2015. I would say this team's probably better on paper preseason, but I think people forget what the expectations were around that 2015 year. So it's just kind of giving me that vibe. So, how do I feel? It's just, I guess I look at a team like the Texans who are struggling, but it's really only one unit struggling. Their offense is struggling. The defense still looks really solid. This is when you lose your quarterback, you're never in a good situation. It's one of those things where you do want to have a competent backup that can get you through a few games, and that's what we're going to have to look to Cooper Rush or I guess Tyler Huntley to do. We'll see how that kind of plays out. But like Lamar will be back post bye week, it sounds like. We'll get more details later. But this is where you need to be able to lean on something like your defense, lean on something like your run game to get you through a tough stretch. And the Baltimore Ravens have not done anything through the first 4 games that make me confident that they can go back to like a, ground and pound, clock control, game managed, defensive stalwart. Like they're not that team right now. So how do I feel? Feel like shit is how I feel. And they just haven't done anything in the first 4 weeks that I can like point to something and be like, that's how they're going to get through this. I can't give you that answer. We have Derrick Henry in the backfield. I feel like we should be in a position to be like, let's run the ball, play action. Cooper Rush comes in, just a game manager. But this offensive line has done absolutely nothing to inspire confidence that they can go out there against tight boxes, because everyone knows where the ball is going to be going, and just move their guys off the line. Like we're in that type of tough situation.
Yeah, Cole, it's funny you brought up 2015 because that was pretty much my game story off of Sunday's game. I was thinking exactly that when we were watching that game. This feels like, and that was the year where Perryman, their first round pick, got hurt in the summer. We never saw him. And Dennis Pitta was still out for the year from the hip the previous year. They've lost a handful of guys in training camp or over the summer. And then started in week 1 when Suggs blew out his Achilles in that Denver game, right? And then it just never relented. They lost Forsett and Steve Smith and Joe Flacco, and Brent Urban was out. So it was like, it just never, it was unrelenting. And yeah, that was my first thought when we were watching that. And, you could talk all you want. And, I've heard some snickering. Well, hey, the best roster in the league should be able to withstand this. And but no, it's just too many. It just gets to the point where when you lose this many team leaders, this many Pro Bowl players, you're going to have it's going to drag you down. And the other thing is they weren't playing really well with these guys. Let's be honest. You'd feel better about Lamar missing time if, as you said, if they had something to hang their hat on. I asked this question to a couple people today. What does this team do well right now? Anybody? They've created some explosive. Yeah, they've created some explosive plays on offense pretty consistently. Tyler Loop's made his field goals. Jordan South's having a heck of a year. But come on. What does this team do well right now? I don't think they do anything well on the defensive side of the ball. And special teams has been fine, but and that's got to be the concern. What do you hang your hat on? How do you figure out how to scratch off a win or two here until some guys get back?
Man, how wild is this right here? The number 3 scoring offense through 4 weeks. They've put up 131 points, and yet the dichotomy, they're the worst scoring defense in the league. 133 points they've allowed. So yeah, it's night and day on each side of the ball. We've known this. They have not been able to overcome the defense. And obviously in recent weeks, the offense has just as many questions in a lot of ways, especially given yesterday's press conference. And we're getting there in just a bit. Cole, I want to hear your thoughts. I know something about that irked you, the way that John Harbaugh handled it. I think maybe that's putting it lightly. But Jeff, first and foremost, since you are our pulse in a lot of ways with boots on the ground and the access that you have both on the road and in Baltimore at one winning drive, much was made of the Banners report post-game where you had a number of key leaders that did not show face to the media in that losing Kansas City locker room. One, what was your take on it? Two, did you have any perspective? And three, what do you think it says about where this team is internally right now in terms of the grasp that John Harbaugh has moving forward on the locker room?
Yeah, first of all, just a little bit how it works. As soon as the game ends, there's usually a cooling off period. Most of the media go to the press conference room and we await. Usually they always bring in Harbaugh and the quarterback and then maybe one or two other players. I'm by myself on the road. So I can't be in two places at once, obviously. I know the Banner since 2 or 3 people. So they can sort of divide and conquer. And the locker room opens as soon as the podium sessions start. So the Banner and Gianna, in this case, typically go straight to the locker room to try to get guys. This isn't new, first of all. I mean, when I get in there after the podium, the locker room's usually pretty empty. Win or lose. I mean, these guys don't like to hang around too much. After bad losses, you probably get a quick exodus. But again, we talked a little bit about this earlier, and I'm always cautious as a media member to complain about guys not doing interviews because I don't think people can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think most people care. I think already they think media, some of the reporters are whiny, entitled, and we're not owed anything. And I get it. So I'm not going to sit here and complain about who so-and-so. I will say, you learn a lot about different people on who stands up in a loss. Who's there when things are going bad? Who talks? Kyle Hamilton's been a guy that consistently talks. Tyler Linderbaum available. Guys that don't, to wait around a little bit for everybody, and knowing that people want to know what they thought and they have to talk because they don't want they don't want their younger teammates to have to talk about a loss and to have to wear it. So, that's been typical. I mean, Roquan's typically not there much after losses. Sometimes he's not there after wins too. I don't think Roquan just sits there and waits for the glory, but I think Ray Lewis understood that after a tough loss, he should be in front of cameras because he's the leader of this team. So no question. I'm sure we'll spend plenty of time talking about John Harbaugh, the coordinator's leadership. I wrote a column for tomorrow. I don't particularly promote my work too much, but I wrote a column on tomorrow about how, it's time for Harbaugh to step up. This needs to be his finest hour. He needs to lead them out of this mess. But I also think the leadership needs to be in that locker room, and they need to be mentally tougher. We've seen it too often when things aren't going right. They kind of fall apart a little bit. We saw it Sunday. They were playing well. The defense holds the team to a field goal. Offense is ready to go down and lead 14-3. They throw the interception. They just fall. Happens too often. They need to show more mental toughness, and they need to be more resilient. And I think guys need to be more accountable. But people are going to handle the media however they see fit. I truly believe nobody owes me an interview, but it's up to other guys. I think it's not about us. It's about how it affects the other teammates. And if certain guys continue to shirk talking to the media after tough losses, it falls on one or two guys. And at this point, it's fallen on pretty much Kyle Hamilton every week. And he's always a guy that's willing to kind of stand in there, take accountability, and actually try to provide in-depth answers.
Yeah, really well said. And, I kind of go back to what Mitch Schwartz told us last week when he joined us. And, I asked the question, when teams are going through these rough times, who do they look to in the locker room? Is it the coaches or the players? And he kind of spoke to the leadership group. And, we've heard, what did they call the group? The Ravens call their group the leadership council or whatever.
Yeah, Harbaugh has a player leadership council.
That's what it is. Okay. So, we've heard about this in recent years, and does that still exist? I feel like what is it? Who is it? Are they being used?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just things feel off. The vibe feels off. And maybe it's just because we're looking inwards during losses, but when you're losing, that's when your leadership needs to stand up the most, definitely more than when you're winning. So it just seems like the first time in a very long time, the Baltimore Ravens don't have that leadership group to kind of lean back on. And I think that's one of the most concerning things for me. And, like you mentioned, this isn't just like a recent thing where someone like Roquan Smith isn't showing up after a loss. I don't remember hearing from him after the AFC Championship game. I was in the building, and I remember they had him up on the jumbotron before the game, and he was the big motivational leader. And then they lay an egg, and then he's nowhere to be found. And that, I don't know, like that just doesn't sit right with me when I hear from players all the time about how important that core leadership group is. Like, where are you? Like, where's the voice? And again, maybe it's just because we had Ray Lewis, who's probably the most motivational player of sports history, to kind of have to follow in those footsteps can be tough. But I feels like the Ravens are missing that.
Yeah, real quick, Bobby. I mean, there's other guys. I mean, I credited Kyle Hamilton. Derrick Henry's talked after every game. After the Colts game, he called over the media because he wanted to take ownership for the fumble. That needs to be said. Other guys like Linderbaum, Adafe Owe's typically available. There's plenty of guys that talk, and even to his credit, I know, there's a love-hate thing goes on with Marlon Humphrey in the local media. He can be highly difficult at times. After the Colts game, he stood in there. He basically, I don't think the team loved what he said when he said, well, our defense basically stinks right now in so many words. But he talked. I mean, he's one of those veterans. So it's not everybody. And I think all this starts coming to light when their team's losing, right? Everyone's trying to figure out why they're struggling, the on-field, whether they have enough leadership, whether that's kind of a sign of a bigger problem. Guys choose how to handle it. I do think they have leaders on this team. I do push back a little, and I'm not saying Cole was making this point, but I love people who say we don't have a leader like Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Well, no, you know what? Those guys are transcendent players. They're two of the best players in the history of the NFL. No franchise has leaders like Ed Reed, and you don't come across those guys often. There is always going to be a difference. But, yeah, they need more guys to step forward and say enough's enough. And, it goes back to how they're losing these games. They're getting punched in the mouth. They're getting beat up physically these last 2 weeks. And, I don't think people are used to seeing the lack of pushback by the Ravens. I don't think people are used to seeing guys not be ticked off and kind of draw a reaction and a punch back. Bobby, I know you mentioned a couple times during Sunday's game, there has been a defeated look at times over the last couple of weeks. And that's not something we're accustomed to with John Harbaugh coach teams.
Yeah, man, whether it was the CBS camera shots of the sideline or, I mean, gosh, it goes all the way back to what you referenced. And by the way, we know what you meant by Colts game. That was the Lions game.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah.
Monday night a week ago.
These damn blue teams all look the same, right?
To the Ravens defense, I think everybody looks the same right now, through 4 weeks. But
they can't see the front of their jersey. They're too busy seeing the back of all their jerseys. So.
On the other side of the ball, Lele's only looking at Lamar, right, at times. But
or the ground.
Long story short, there's been a certain demeanor, whether it be body language, tone. You listen to Kyle Van Noy's podcast that was released yesterday, and you're hearing this defeated tone, this defeated body language is what you're watching through the screen. And it just begs the question, what is happening with this organization? So I think it's a good segue in terms of something that Jeff tweeted out. We've already referenced it a couple times. Cole, we'll go to you first on this. And Jeff, as you got back wheels down from Kansas City yesterday, I'll read the tweet as follows. Listen back to it, meaning the Harbaugh press conference, and can't remember too many times where he was that vocal in critique of offensive approach / plan, particularly against the Chiefs blitzes. And we all saw a few of those unmarked men, cover zero. Lamar was in no man's land. Cole, you've already covered it extensively on road graders. But first and foremost, John got up there yesterday, and there was a twofold approach, I think, that he took. one for his defensive coordinator, another for his offensive coordinator. Let's be clear. While saying we at times yesterday, he threw Todd Monken under the bus multiple times with his specific play calling and the lack of execution, the lack of success rate, the lack of running the ball. We need to run more plays. It's just not good enough, paraphrasing some of this. What irked you about yesterday's approach that he took?
John's wearing a headset. That's what I don't understand. John's wearing a headset. John's I know Todd's up in the booth as a play caller. John's wearing a headset. He can talk to Todd. If you're pissed off about the plays that you're seeing, say something, because they had 2 4th and 1s, and it was a similar approach with quarterbacks throwing the ball away. If you wanted the ball pounded, get on the mic and say something. You're the head coach. I guess what I've just found so bizarre about it is, a lot of people have called him Teflon John because he insulates himself from some of the criticism because of his approach. He's a CEO coach. He lets his coordinators do their thing. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I genuinely do. Because you bring in, guys with specialized skill sets and you let them, have success in that role while you kind of manage the bigger picture things. That's always been kind of John's approach. But if you're going to go call out I completely agree. The protections were quite frankly dog shit. They didn't make sense. They weren't base blocking when they were getting delayed blitzes. That's why they were running into these problems. They kept getting, calling slide protections away from the blitzers. You know what Spagnuolo is going to do. He's done it to you 4 years in a row where, they're going to bring delayed blitzes. They're going to basically wait till your protection sets and then send a mic up the middle. It's not one of those things where, they watch a lot more film and they let's be real. They've forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. And I know that that's coming. It wasn't a surprise to me. So it's just one of those things. John's in the meeting rooms. John's in the prep meetings. John's on the mic, talking with his coordinators. If you're going to throw Todd Monken under the bus about that, you take blame as well, in my opinion, because you are supposed to be that CEO coach. That means you have to own what they do. It's not like he doesn't have override powers. It's the first time I can remember John really throwing a guy under the bus. And, it's kind of funny too. Like the offense obviously wasn't good on Sunday. The protections killed them. They didn't execute. But the issues this season have been a lot more on the defensive side of the ball. Todd has one rough game and he's getting thrown to the woodshed. That's what didn't sit well with me. It's like, I think Todd has some issues that need to be solved. They get a little, I always say they get a little silly in the red zone where they're kind of doing some weird things that I don't think they need to be doing. Just run it up the gut. You have 22 back there. It's just one of those things where I just look at John and I'm wondering, what's your role in all of this then? Like, if you're going to just throw him under the bus, if you're that CEO guy, that's where you got to question first. So that's what I struggled with the most. It just, that one really got to me because John's under fire and it just felt like he used Todd as a shield. Jay-Z, I'd be curious because, the way John communicates a lot better than I do. You hear him in every presser. What was kind of your take on that?
Yeah, I had to connect at Kansas City. I didn't get back in time, but I did watch it. So I didn't ask any questions. I wasn't in the room, but I think 2 things. One, what I don't know and would like to know is, did he tell Todd Monken he was going to do this? Because I know in the past there's been practices where he's warned a certain coach or coordinator that he's coming after them today. He's going to get on them during practice because he wants to see how the players have their back and how the players respond. So he sort of scripts stuff to say, "Hey, I'm going to get on you today. Don't worry about it. I just, I need to get these guys' attention a little bit." So was this a motivational tactic by John? What I do know is nothing he does or says is by accident. He's very careful about what he says. He reviews what he says when it comes out and the transcripts comes out. And I just have to think that, he knows their offense needs to carry the freight here for these couple weeks. And he also knows throwing more Zach Orr has just been getting crushed for 2 weeks. So if John Harbaugh stands up there and goes after Zach Orr, it's only going to increase the talk that Zach Orr is on the way out and he's going to get fired and he's a young, inexperienced coordinator. And why I would not, it would not have been right if he crushed him publicly. So I don't see it as an offense versus defense thing. I think John knows the unit that's been performing for the most part. But I think he also knows that their defense is going to remain in trouble with all these guys out. And they're going to need their offense to play much better, to play much cleaner, and to not do silly stuff. And, I have to think that there was a message there. And Todd Monken was not taken at all by surprise by his comments.
That's such an interesting perspective. Yeah, I definitely didn't think about that. And it is interesting because someone kind of asked me today, if Cooper Rush is leading this team, like what's their path to success? And I honestly think the best thing they could do, and I kind of threw it up on Twitter. It was a game from 2005, Dolphins, Ravens. Jamal Lewis had like 34 carries in that game. And, it was just one of those things where it's like the only way this offense is going to function is through Derrick Henry moving forward. Like Cooper Rush isn't going to come out there and kind of light the world on fire. Especially with what we've seen from Cooper Rush in a Ravens uniform. It's looked a lot worse than it did in a Cowboys uniform. So who does that put the most pressure on? You might think Derrick Henry, but puts a lot more pressure on this offensive line because they have to go out there in tight situations against stacked boxes. And for once, I want to see this offensive line play pissed off. I want to see them move bodies and do it on more than one play. We've seen it a couple times in the last few weeks where they have a perfectly blocked play and then they're just getting blown off the line of scrimmage for the next 4 run plays. And, from a motivational tactic, it would be very interesting to see how it plays out because I think there is a lot of pressure on this offensive line. They are going to have to gel quickly. We saw them bring in Kenyon Green, probably talk about that in a little bit. They may have to look at some different answers as well in terms of who's actually playing on the O-line. Can some other bodies get out there and actually do something? Can Corey Bullock get you something? Can, Kenyon Green, if he becomes active, can he get you something that Voorhees and Falele aren't? Because right now they're just simply not moving the guys in front of them. And they're going to have to if Cooper Rush is under center.
Fellas, too, the elephant in the room is if Ronnie can't go. And Jeff, I know you were there in Kansas City and you were tweeting out certain observations from, your vantage point there pregame, whether it was KVN getting some work in prior or Ronnie, laboring through a pregame workout. I mean, I can't believe, quite frankly, based on what you tweeted out and others, that Ronnie played. And then you go back and watch some of the film, that right ankle quite literally looked like it was being dragged through certain sets out there. So the elephant in the room is that if he can't go, obviously Joe Noteboom, who came in for him, would be your shoe-in left tackle unless you're moving Roger over. And I can't imagine they're willing to do that experiment in season at this point. So that's where that stands. We're going to get more into that in just a bit as we kind of look ahead towards Houston, look ahead at where they're at right now as an offense moving forward. But first, before we get to some super chats, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. We'll tell you more about them in just a bit. It is use promo code HMA. That'll get you up to $100 and $100 match on your first deposit. Quick word from them right here.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using the code HMA. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
And you heard it there. Promo code HMA. That'll get you up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. You can see Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Hopefully you guys check out our brand sponsor, Sleeper, today or tonight. Guys, let's get to some super chats before we get back into the content. Evan from earlier on had this to say. For 2 years, the fans been loud about the line issues, meaning the offensive line. The coaching staff / media told us to ignore our eyes, and that this was a good group. How many pressures, sacks, and how many Lamar injuries will it take for the gaslighting to end? Cole, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, I mean, they've moneyballed the guard position for a number of years now. I was just talking about this with our good friend Spencer Schultz, and we're kind of looking at some past drafts this afternoon. Isn't it crazy that Ben Powers was a guy that you probably should have paid? Like, it's crazy to kind of look back on that situation. And to be like, I'm not one to lie about what my opinions were at the time. I definitely wasn't on board to do that. But he's really panned out in Denver. And, they've struggled to kind of find that guard solution. A lot of people feel very strongly they should have brought Kevin Zeitler back. We've talked about that numerous times. I won't go into it, but they've moneyballed the position. They have a 7th round pick that was probably a higher pick, should have been like more of a mid-round guy. And then a converted right tackle that was a little bit more of a project manning it. And you're seeing Tyler Linderbaum now struggle. And, you have to ask yourself, is it something injury related? Is it because he's playing between a bottom 5 guard combination? Or is it his own play that's regressing? And so that interior is just killing them. And then you look at the tackle issues. Ronnie's hurt again. This isn't necessarily a surprise. It's really hard to find a left tackle. So again, I was all for paying Ronnie Stanley, just because when you're drafting in the late first, you go look at a guy like Josh Connerly, who's struggling in Washington right now. That's who you would have been bringing in as your starting day 1 left tackle. So it's really hard to solve that left tackle situation. But Rodgers also kind of regressed. How many times is he going to get walked back on the bull rush? So the O-line's struggling. They're not gelling. You got to call in George Warhop and into kind of the coaching question mark as well, because I feel like they're not gelling at all as a unit. They're not communicating pre-snap. There's numerous examples I can find of them not communicating. That falls on coaching as much as the other things. So, yeah.
Mitch just last week, right, sang George's praises and his experience with him. It's obviously a different year, different personnel, lot in play there. With George Warhop, who, of course, was the interim offensive line coach last year when Joe D tragically passed away right before the year began. Donovan Carter writes, I'm not above wanting the Ravens to tank this year, so emotions are running all over the place.
Hey,
there.
A top 10 pick isn't the end of the world. I'm just saying.
Sod Blitz 34 writes, I've been wanting him to call out the play calling for years. He should be doing it in the game. He turned into grandpa. He needs to be more assertive. That on John Harbaugh. Samuel Sarkany. Jeff, can you see them selling at the deadline?
Yeah. I mean, look, this isn't baseball. I mean, you have to have things guys are interested in or players guys are interested in. And then the other issue there is, are you getting back what exceeds the comp pick you're going to get for them leaving? I don't, with Steve Bisciotti as the owner and how competitive the Ravens coaching staff is, front office, they're not going to tank. But if you get some decent offers for pending free agents, why wouldn't you at least consider it? That's why I think the trade deadline is November 4th this year, right, guys? So where is that? That would put them
in between Miami and Minnesota game.
Between right before week 10. So that means they have 4 more games left, including their bye week before that. If you're say you go 1-3 in those games, if you're 2-6, you basically got to almost win out. At that point, you're not acquiring guys. You're not acquiring guys for the trade deadline to help you down the stretch. You're probably looking to sell off and get picks. I know it's something we've never even thought about, but
what a crazy thought. Oh my God.
And we're not there yet. The one thing I will say, guys, if you can get an interior defensive lineman with term, and that means not a pending free agent, a guy you can keep, I think you have to consider making that trade with the uncertainty around Nnamdi Madubuike's future. So I think there's situations where you could look to add, even if it, just not necessarily adding a pending free agent, add a guy that you think you could have for a couple of years, because they're not going to rebuild. There's too many pieces in place here, but if this keeps up, they're going to have to significantly turn over a part of their roster. And, it's a situation you don't want to be in, but it would be foolish not to take advantage of it if your record suggests you should.
Regardless of what happens, whether it's buyers or sellers, there's going to be plenty of content leading up to that November 4th deadline for us on Tuesdays in the coming weeks. Sod Blitz also writes, Zio was all we had. His staff was made from scratch. Donovan Carter says they need to go all in on offense and not defense. Right now, offense is our defense. They need to accept that this is an offensive team. That from Donovan Carter. Guys, Cole, what a quick turn of a page. It was a literal quick turn of a page last week, given a short week with Monday Night Football into a road trip to Kansas City where they have not yet won in the Lamar era, and that will have to wait until the next time they travel to Arrowhead. As you look at Houston, 2-1-3 teams, right? This is a talented, at least on paper, with recognition in names and former draft picks, defensive front. But this team is underperforming, obviously, through 4 weeks. Both are going to be a level of desperate, you would think, going in here. I don't know how any team league-wide can be more desperate than where the Ravens are right now, but Houston is certainly up there. Can this offensive line give Cooper Rush an opportunity to do what he wants to do? Obviously, they want to establish the ground game, but to your point, if they're not moving bodies, then they're going to have to get that frickin' football out of his hand quickly.
Yeah, and I want to take people back for a second, because if you go back to the Tyler Huntley 2021 year, was that the Bengals last year? Or was that 22? It's 21.
What's this now? What was it? What
year did Tyler Huntley?
About the year that they lost the year they lost the Bengals in the playoffs?
Yeah, where Huntley had like multiple starts. Was that 21?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was at the Broncos game, and then everybody hated me online. So I was at the game with the Prochet. Anyway, whatever. Very forgettable trip. So I go back to the conversations around the quarterback position, because remember there was a quote unquote quarterback controversy for a few weeks, with some people being like, why, let's let Lamar graduate and pay or roll with Tyler Huntley, which was hilarious to look back on. The whole conversation was insane, but what got people fooled was the Ravens came out after Huntley became the starter with a quick passing game. So Tyler Huntley was pretty efficient, and that's where people were like, what's this? And it's one of those things that you're going to do. You change your playbook to your quarterback. The Ravens obviously weren't able to install a new offense on the fly on Sunday, but you're going to see more quick concepts. You're going to see more RPOs, intended to get the ball out of Cooper Rush's hands. So I always find it so interesting, because that the Ravens have that as part of their arsenal, but when the offensive line is struggling, we still get these late developing concepts that, where Lamar's running for his life. And it's always been a really big frustration of mine, but it will be one of those things, because, the offensive line is struggling. Then we have Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. coming to town. Not necessarily what I'm looking forward to. Joe Noteboom looked really bad in relief for Ronnie. Ronnie could barely move, which I think is terrifying in and of itself because of the ankle issues he's had throughout his career. That's scary. I would personally go with Carson Vincent, but we won't get into that right now. I'd rather just kind of have the kid developing if Joe Noteboom's not going to actually give you starter caliber play. But I also just kind of want the film to be able to do on the channel. But Jeff's rolling his eyes. So just to go to your point, sorry, to get ready for the Texans, I think you have to embrace that quick passing game and embrace that RPO game, because it's going to do a couple things for you. It's going to naturally slow up those edges. With the RPO built into it, they need to read. So it's going to naturally slow them down a tick. And I think that's been a big missed opportunity for the Ravens through the first 4 weeks with Lamar. I can't tell you how many RPOs I've seen. They just haven't been there. And maybe that speaks to Lamar being limited. He hasn't looked himself mobility-wise, through the first 4 weeks. So maybe there's something more going on there. But I think that's a really quick way to stymie their pass rush and create some of those high percentage looks. But what that does is it puts a lot of pressure, because, you go RPO on first down, incomplete. Now you're 2nd and 10. You're probably in a pass down situation. So it puts you behind the sticks pretty quickly, right? And that's where you start to feel the loss of a Lamar Jackson that can be so dynamic at quarterback for you, make those big plays, those explosive plays. So I think in order for this offense to have success against the Houston Texans, they're going to have to move away from searching for those explosive plays, which they've still been able to generate this year despite the issues. And they're going to have to go into more of a death by 1,000 cuts, efficient passing game with a ground game that I would personally build around, downhill running concepts. Because what that's going to do is it's going to guarantee you 2-3 yards a game. Yeah, you're probably going to lose your 15, 20 plus chunk runs with Henry, but I think you have to turn this into an efficient ball moving offense. And, I think that's going to put Cooper Rush in the best position to succeed as well, giving him those high percentage looks. The reason I started with that rant is because I just find when the offensive line's struggling, I'd love to see this team be able to transition mid-game and try and give Lamar those same looks to kind of, get that defense on their heels, get them reading something so that when you want to generate an explosive play later, you can do that. But it feels like we just never are able to do that in game.
I think it's funny you brought up Tyler Huntley. I think he's going to play Sunday. I think you'll probably see him. And I this isn't anything I've heard, although John Harbaugh just casually brought that up yesterday. I don't know if you remember his quote. He basically I have confidence in Tyler Huntley too. Well, no one really asked that. So it was kind of curious that he just volunteered that. I think if they're pretty confident Lamar is out, we'll see him elevated on Saturday. And I just think Tyler Huntley gives you a better chance to run the football and some of the stuff with the RPO, and the Texans actually have to honor it, which, they're not going to, this is a Texans team that have been a matchup nightmare. The Ravens in recent years. So I think I would not be shocked at all if there's a couple things in there for Tyler Huntley, or if Cooper Rush is really struggling and the run game struggling, they go to Tyler Huntley at some point. It just wouldn't shock me. But secondly, I think with Lamar, the beauty of Lamar Jackson about how he's covered for so much for people, right, on this team. He's so good and so explosive that he can, he certainly helps the defense when they're putting up a lot of points and possessing the ball. He certainly covers for some of the offensive line struggles. Now he's not there. So they need everybody. They need the offensive line to have the best game of the year. The receivers need to get open. I know Orlovsky's been very critical about how Ravens wide receivers have performed against man coverage. And they need the defense and special teams to score. I think you go into this game in a recipe for beating the Texans. And if I'm not mistaken, fellas, they have the number one scoring defense in the league, the Texans do, I believe. I mean, this isn't an easy assignment for Cooper Rush. I mean, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Stingley. You got inside linebackers who fly around, and you got the two killer edge rushers. And I know the Rankins, was having a really good year inside. So this isn't an easy assignment. And, you're going to need the defense at some point to get you a short field maybe, or to get a turnover and score a touchdown on their own. You're going to need special teams maybe to do something. It can't all be on Cooper Rush. The recipe has to be getting offense from other places. As I said, Lamar's covered for a lot of things. He's not there to cover for. He likely won't be there to cover for it Sunday. They need everyone else to step up their game a little and do a part in this. Because, I'm telling you, this is as close to a must-win as it gets. Because with the Rams coming down the following week, I truly believe the Rams are one of the best 5 teams in the league. They're the exact kind of team the Ravens are going to struggle with this year too, with the decisive quarterback, the pass rushers. It's not a great recipe. So they need to get a win Sunday, and they need to pull out all the stops, whether that means getting Keaton Mitchell the ball a couple times, whether that means getting Wester involved, do some different small short stuff, getting your playmakers the ball. They kind of need to throw the kitchen sink at the Texans Sunday.
Yeah, I remember Gordon McGinnis from Pro Football Focus, who's a big Ravens fan. He did a piece a few years ago. I'd have to go find it, but on backup quarterbacks and having that rushing upside and how much more beneficial that is for the offense, because they're giving you. There's a reason that pocket passing backup quarterbacks are backups, right? It's because they you get the Devin Learys of the world that, just probably shouldn't be starting in a game. But Tyler Huntley brings you a different dynamic. And I think that's really important because of what that RPO game, that read option, zone option, all that good stuff, what that can do to the defense. It's just going to slow them up, and it can create that exact opportunity that they need to have. I love the idea of, get two running backs out there in a pony look, get Keaton Mitchell out in space, get Wester out in space. That's what they need to do to be successful. Obviously, Zay Flowers, we know what he can do when he gets out in space. And you still have so many, and it's why I love this wide receiver core. You have a diverse skill set. DeAndre Hopkins is still making ridiculous catches at the, on the sideline. He can still do that. So you have a lot of these weapons at your disposal. It's just, I really think they made a big mistake. And again, maybe there's something going on with Lamar before the hamstring that was the reason this was happening. But the lack of option concepts that involve the quarterback read, I think was a huge mistake through 4 weeks. And I think they need to find a way to embrace that if they're going to have any success without him.
I went back to that Ed Oliver hit where you got a clean look at Lamar week 1.
Yeah.
And I wonder, while there was nothing that was,
because he had a couple of options in that game before that hit. Like he had one, I think it was that drive or the drive before that he went for 16 yards on an option concept.
Yeah. There was nothing concrete evidence wise, right, from that hit, much like there wasn't on Sunday. If you go look at the play where he exited afterwards, there's nothing concrete about it. You can bring that thing down into pixels replay wise, and there's nothing that jumps off the highlight tape to you. So it just makes you wonder, how far back does this hamstring injury go? What were those cramps really specifically several weeks ago? And what is the timeline? Obviously, the reported timeline from Wacker and the Sun is 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll end up seeing on that. Jeff, a couple things for you. One, can you just clarify what your prediction is there on Huntley potentially being in the game? Is that a wrinkle, or is that your prediction if Rush starts to struggle moving the ball that they're going to try and get a spark in Huntley?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Bobby, because I didn't want that to be misunderstood. I even not heard that. I when John Harbaugh just volunteered it, I certainly made a mental note of it. Wow, that's interesting. I don't think anyone was asking about Tyler Huntley. But no, I think I'm more talking about a wrinkle maybe if their run game struggling to get their run game going, or if Cooper Rush is struggling at halftime and you need a spark and you need to get a little more athleticism at the quarterback position, a guy who might be able to run around and at least give you another element. I would not rule that out. I think this is a kitchen sink game for the Ravens. I don't think they can afford to lose it, and I don't think they could sit there idly by if they're not scoring points at halftime and not try everything to try to win this game. That's the only reason I brought it up, Bobby. It's nothing I've heard beyond Harbaugh's little comment, but it would not surprise me if he's involved in the game somehow.
You might see Derrick Henry rushing the passer.
Let's say it again.
You might see Derrick Henry rushing the passer then.
I mean, and the other thing, guys, about Keaton Mitchell, their whole inactive list is going to be injured guys. So really,
Keaton Mitchell might have to rush the passer.
Yeah. So maybe they make some IR moves, but every guy who has a pulse and is healthy, it should be all hands on deck. He should get a jersey on Sunday. Because if you look at it, I assume Marlon Humphrey will be inactive. I assume Roquan Smith will be inactive. I assume Lamar Jackson will be inactive. Who else am I missing? Wiggins. And you get to 7 really quick when you're doing the countdown. So there should be no reason why. And I think, fans are going to get their wish and see Jair Alexander. In fact, I think Jair Alexander is probably going to be starting on Sunday.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can expect Keaton probably to be active for the first time this season. To your point, it'll be Jair
Vincent.
Potentially since week 1. Carson Vincent, Cole's going to have a block party. David Ajabo will be up, right?
I wonder if his dad follows me on Twitter.
No, be careful what you wish for with that, Cole. But yeah, I mean, look, if they get Van Noy back, maybe David Ajabo is the one healthy scratch because let's face it. I don't know if Travis Jones is healthy. Maybe you don't need to do the 2 elevations. Maybe you just do Okoye and not Okoye and Tupu. Yeah. So they're going to have some tough roster decisions to make, man, but they need some healthy bodies to be addressed. And As I said, this is throw the kitchen sink at the Titans game. I don't know if you line up straight up with them, you like your chances. And I know I'm making like the Texans have to be the 86 Bears. I'm really not. It's more of a reflection of just how banged up the Ravens are and how limited they are when Lamar Jackson's not under center.
And for whatever it's worth, too. I mean, guys, we can remember Christmas and then the wild card game and, keep going. Or was it the divisional round a couple years ago? I mean, the Ravens have had Houston's number for years now, and they've embarrassed them a couple times on national stages like Christmas recently. So I don't know. Take that for whatever it's worth. D'Amico is going to be making sure everybody's reminded of that, whether you were with the organization or not in recent years. More super.
The Ravens revenge tour turned into everyone getting revenge on the Ravens. Love it.
Right. Love it. The revenge tour was easily the worst label that you could possibly put on this team because it feels so stale, right? Because the last several years.
We've been getting revenge for 6 years.
More super chats, fellas. Show Me Roe is in the house, and he says Zio's still employed. The bar is in hell. Mike writes, we're going to look back at letting Mike McDonald go as a detrimental point in franchise history. John should have been moved to the front office or let go. Go ahead, Jeff.
I hate that, man. I mean, look, there's no team in the league that's doing that. There's no team in the league that's firing a Super Bowl winning head coach who just got this team to the AFC Championship game for a coordinator, to promote a coordinator. The situation would not have been fair to John Harbaugh, and it would not have been fair to Mike McDonald. I get it. It stinks that Mike McDonald's gone. I think the jury, I love Mike. I think he's going to be a great head coach, but I think the jury's still out on him as a head coach too. And, it stinks, and you could wish John Harbaugh was gone, but you're not firing your coach after you get to an AFC Championship game. A coach as successful as Harbaugh, that's just not realistic. That's just not realistic.
Harbaugh don't retire from coaching either. John and Jim are going to coach until.
And who says move to the front office? Like, that's something he wants to do. Like, it sounds great. It's convenient. Hey, give him the old nudge. Like he's Ozzie Newsome. That's just not realistic. He's not in the stage of his career where he wants to be in the front office.
What should have happened is the fans should have kidnapped Mike so he couldn't have gone to his interviews. Like we dropped the ball there.
You know what happened? If they would have won the freaking game and beat the Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks would have probably got tired of waiting to interview him, and they wouldn't have been able to interview him. And he would have been their defensive coordinator, and they would have been playing in the Super Bowl.
So this is all Zay Flowers' fault.
Yeah. It's all Zay Flowers' fault.
Oh, all right. Instead, you lose the game, and then your entire staff gets plucked. Right?
I know.
Zio is promoted because in all due respect to Zio, he's the only one left. Weaver goes to Miami. McDonald goes to Seattle. Wilson goes to Tennessee. Am I missing anybody?
No. But, one thing about Zach, guys, like, trust me, I'm not hiding from this. The thought crossed my mind that, maybe they make a dramatic move. Their defense looks so bad again. But, the more I thought about it is that wouldn't have been fair to anybody this week either. Like, hey, Chuck, here's your keys to the defense. Go figure out how to win a game without 7 starters. And they're already going to be swimming upstream, drinking out of the fire hose, whatever cliche you want to use, this week, trying to get a team ready with that many reserves to play the Texans. You add a new voice in the meetings and make dramatic changes in the coaching. I think that would be really tough. I do think it would behoove Zach Orr to have a couple of good defensive performances before this week 6 bye, because if they're going to make a change there, and I haven't heard they are, you probably hope to get to the bye week where you make a dramatic move like that and give yourself time to adjust.
Yeah. Notable, right? The Dean Pease kind of shifted back a little bit to a consultant role this year after being really involved last year when they brought him in Zach's first season. And then, of course, we all know, like you mentioned too, Chuck Pagano is an assistant in the secondary and obviously has a former headman experience during his time in Indianapolis. Colin Donahue writes, why don't you take this one, Cole?
77 film review must give Cole a lot of nightmares. It does, because the bad is really bad, but the 72 film review hasn't been very fun either. So, I mean, both guards are really struggling, and I'm just saying that because no one gives Falele a harder time than I do, but got to keep it real and give them both when I see it on film. So both guards really struggling. Tyler always also struggling, and I'm probably one of his biggest fans. But again, you got to call out what you see on film.
Cole, real quick. Rank the offensive linemen from 1 to 5, 1 being the best, the most consistent, 5 being the worst this year. Because I contend Daniel Faalele has not been their worst offensive lineman this year.
I would say he hasn't been the worst. I agree with you. I would say Ronnie would be the first, but last game's really kind of thrown things off. But I mean, if we're looking at the full 4 games, Ronnie would be 1. I would say, oh my God, 2's hard. It might be, I don't know. It's Tyler or Roger.
Yeah.
It might be Faalele.
I'm telling you, it's funny. I'm not saying he's played well at all.
Why are all 4 tied for second?
when I see all the comments about how got to get rid of him, I'm like, okay, probably should get rid of a couple other guys too. If that's the barometer.
It's the word that you said that I'm struggling with. It's the consistency because again, the lows are low. The lows are he tries to hit someone and falls on the ground bad. Like it's
like that Ben Cleveland rep against the Lions.
That's it. And there was a rep against the Chiefs where Rodgers in a pass set and Faalele comes to give help. And he just completely missed them, and he falls face first. It's it's literally like watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon on Saturday morning. So when you look at full consistency, that's where it becomes tough. Rodgers struggles in the run game. Tyler struggles in the pass game. Voorhees struggles in the pass game. No one's stacking consistency except for Ronnie. Really, his only big blip was Myles Garrett and pass sets, and then obviously playing injured this week really threw him off. Yeah.
Show me. In other words, looks like Faalele gets number 2 right there in the ranking. So, attaboy, Daniel. The problem is
so disgusted. Look at him. He's so beaten.
The problem is
Jeff's been planning this for weeks.
You look more beaten than some of the players were in the locker room Sunday, Cole.
The issue for Daniel is none of his peers have 1 every 20 snaps, a play that goes viral from all the film guys in our creator space, right?
Why is he always falling over? What's he doing?
Oh, man. Show me Rowe. Man, Sip the Tally had one where he was looking at Lamar mid-play. He's looking at Lamar.
That's what I mean. It's a cartoon. This team's a damn cartoon. It drives me nuts.
Show me Rowe with some Canadian currency. Cole, thoughts on a hyper-aggressive defensive plan in the vein of Flores, high risk, high reward, since Orr can't figure anything out, 7 at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you miss Wink Martindale with that post? I've been saying it for a few weeks. This team can't execute any type of zone coverage right now. The big issue they had, teams traditionally played too high against Kansas City, and that's how they were able to kind of shut them down, spread 5 across the horizontal part of the field, keep the deep ball quiet. But when you have no pass rush, you can't really just play too high looks. And that's what this team is struggling with right now. That lack of a pass rush. I'm not necessarily trying to give Zach Orr a pass, but when you can't generate a pass rush, it really limits you in your play calling. So I'm all for being aggressive because they're not holding up in man. They're not holding up in zone. You may as well try and generate that pass rush. But the problem is when they try and create these simulated pressures where they show 7, there's been times where their pressure outnumbers their protection, and they're still not getting to the quarterback. The execution is so poor that, and again, I'm not giving Zach Orr a pass because there's obviously fundamental flaws within their scheme, but guys aren't executing at the same time. It's just, I tweeted it 4 or 5 times because I want it perfectly clear. There's no one thing. There's no one silver bullet on either side of the ball. There's bad coaching. There's bad execution. There's bad attitudes. There's bad leadership. It's a laundry list of issues, but that is one thing I completely agree with. Show me Rowe. I'd be upping my aggressiveness because at some point it's going to generate a turnover.
Yeah, Wink used to have an expression, one way or another, the band is going to play. So you just send everybody and you're either going to get a good play or you're going to watch the guy running 80 yards behind you for a touchdown. And I think there's something to be said for just taking it hard and rather than just bleeding out by, little stab wounds here and there and giving up these 10, 11 play yard drives, which milk half a quarter, The question is, their blitzes don't get home either. So what's an ultra aggressive? I saw some blitzes in Kansas City. I also saw them not make any plays on the quarterback because he was getting rid of the ball before the blitzes. And I always thought that was the underrated thing about Wink Martindale and Drew Wilkins, who's with the Rams in a couple weeks. He designed a lot of the blitzes. He was Wink's right-handed man. They got free runners to the quarterback all the time. They don't get free runners anymore, this team. They just don't seem to. And if they do, he's a step late all the time. So I think you can be hyper aggressive, but at some point you need to get to the quarterback. And they haven't even been doing that when they blitz, it's a scary thought.
Man, you think about how Mike Mack had guys like Ronald Darby and Arthur Maulet firing on all cylinders. You missed that disguise. You missed those nickel blitzes. You missed that.
We could have had John head of HR right now, and we could have just had Mike.
Yeah, brought him in.
He would have cleaned up the administration.
Man,
I know.Maybe Zach Orr would have taken a PR job. I mean, just move them all out.
Man,
Rob Ryan would have been the head chef.
Man, one thing that comes to mind too from Sunday is a blatant confusion on third down. Nate Wiggins is seemingly looking for his assignment, asking for his assignment. Xavier Worthy goes and burns them for a third down conversion, something that the Chiefs crushed them on. They were 4 for 4 on fourth down, 5 for 15 on third down, which doesn't necessarily like jump off the page. But when you think about the time of possession dichotomy, it makes every sense. They had they beat the Ravens at their own game, much like 6 days prior Detroit did at their own place.
And I can't prove that. Go ahead, Cole. Sorry.
No, I just want to say, and to be clear, because it almost sounded like I was giving Zach Orr a pass there. That wasn't my intention, because they look like a poorly coached unit, and that specific play that Bobby just referenced is the exact type of stuff. Like, as much as that's communication on the field, that's happened a few times this year where guys don't seem to know what's going on, and that shows me a poor discipline, poorly coached unit.
Yeah, and I could never prove this, and I don't know how you would, but I have a hard time believing how much the defense has been on the field for those first couple of weeks hasn't been the cause of some of these soft tissue injuries. You just can't. They're just playing too much. They're on the field too much that early in the season after not playing in the preseason, and guys wear down. It's hard to believe that hasn't had something to do with it. And the other thing, the other thing I would say, guys, is, it's this week. What'll be interesting to watch, does Kyle Hamilton relaying the signals and lining up the defense change anything? I'm not putting this on Roquan at all, but he's the guy now. He's going to have the green dot. A lot of people wondered, why was Kyle Hamilton in the game in the fourth quarter in Kansas City? He's the guy with the green dot. And I think they still wanted to get lined up correctly and give young guys a chance to fly around and make plays. And Hamilton, who always wants to be out there, at least was able to keep things organized and make them, make sure guys got a chance and we're in mostly in the right place. But there is a lot on Kyle Hamilton this week, because he's going to, presumably be the guys that call in the defensive signals. And in front of them are likely going to be two rookie. Well, Trent Simpson's not a rookie, but he just is not a very experienced player. So it's going to be two young inside linebackers in front of him.
Very curious too to see if they lean on a rotation at any given point. Give Jay Higgins an opportunity. Give Jake Hummel. Give Jake Hummel an opportunity. That's right, Cole. Jay Higgins an opportunity. Maybe Roy will be coming on this show.
Hey, Bobby, if Jay Higgins and Carson Vincent play extensively, just let Cole do the show next week by himself. I'm gonna stay home.
No, I'm replacing you two with Roy. Jay Higgins has a day. I'm getting a new co-host.
Oh man. Hey, speaking of parents too, we want to welcome Steve Loop to the chat tonight. He is mixing it up there. Father of Tyler, and as we already mentioned, I think at the top, Tyler's playing really well, kicking really well, getting that landing zone figured out last week. So best wishes to him, and congratulations, Steve, to you and your family on your son's rookie season thus far. Let's cook through some super chats before we jump, guys. Marco G writes, Jeff, can you ask Harbs or Todd how the communication between them works during the game? Curious why they address things a day later instead of during.
Yeah, that question's been asked before, and John does talk to Todd Monken during the game, and I even think John probably told him what he was thinking, Sunday. But at that point, the cat was pretty well out of the bag. That game got away from him in like a 2-drive span, 2-3 drives there, and it just got away from him. But Cole made the point, and I actually wrote this too in the story I'm writing for tomorrow. That's on Harbaugh, he is in charge. So whether he said it to Todd, like, what are we doing against the blitz? Why are you abandoning that? during the game, I don't know, but he does talk to Todd Monken before possessions. He does talk to him before certain plays. That's just the ongoing communication he has. What he's saying, I don't know, guys.
Yeah. Mongo Slade says the Eagles fired a coach 2 years removed from a Super Bowl and won another one. Mad Rasta,
that's 2 years. That's not a week later.
Right. Mad Rasta says Ravens team build is bad and wasted the rookie contract years of Lamar, or should have been fired week 1 after that mess last year. The role model writes, I don't remember the last time I've seen this team actually have fun on the field. Everything feels so tense. And guys, I think this is probably a good place to end. Our final thoughts on, again, the state of the Ravens is what we wanted to discuss. And the fact that you just have to stop and think. We're doing a State of the Ravens broadcast 4 weeks into a season, talking about body language, demeanor, tone, want to, desire. Where are they, Cole, in your mind as they get ready for week 5? Do you have a belief in your heart as a fan, or whether you want to look at it objectively or not, that Cooper Rush and company, as Jeff said many times, pulling out all the stops as they prepare for the Texans, do you feel like they can get it done and live to fight another day for Lamar's recovery?
Listen, you're gonna find out a lot about this team on Sunday. I know a lot of people are very low. I'm one of them. I completely get it. I get that if it's nice out, which it looks like it's going to be on Sunday, if you want to find something else to do between the hours of 1 and 4 p.m., I completely get it. But I think when your back's up against the wall and the Baltimore Ravens' back is up against the wall, that's when you learn a lot. It's fight or flight mode. And we are going to find out if this team has fight or if it's flight. And I'm not saying, the other games were important, but this is probably going to go down as one of the most important games on the Ravens schedule, no matter what happens, because it's going to determine a lot, even though it's a week 5 game. They're not mathematically eliminated by any means, but spiritually, mentally, it's going to change a lot if they lose this game. So did they have any fight in them? Does the O-line have any fight in them? No one is going to be surprised by what the Ravens game plan is going to be. It's going to rely on this offensive line to move bodies. If they come out Sunday and they don't want to go punch someone in the mouth, then it's time to find a new offensive line, quite frankly. So I think you're going to learn a lot about what this team has, a lot about these players that there's going to have to be decisions made around some of them in the do you replace them? Do you upgrade? Where do you upgrade? There's going to be a lot of questions answered for a week 5 game.
Yeah, I think Cooper Rush will be fine. We've seen him. He's been fine before when he's had to start. He'll manage the game. Will he be perfect? No. I mean, we saw it, in training camp a little. He tends to put the ball in harm's way more than you'd like. But they have to do something defensively. And shame on them if they're not in fight mode when you have all these young players who are likely going to be playing on the field. They should be plenty hungry. To me, it comes down in a lot of ways to John Harbaugh. He's been here before. They've been in tough spots before where they've had a lot of injuries. They've kind of been counted out. The adversity swirling. This is when he's done some of his best work in the past. John Harbaugh needs to lead them out of this mess, get them ready to play. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just find a way to win a game. Just see if you can create a couple stops defensively or create a turnover defensively that leads into points. Do something that's going to make your quarterback's life a little easier. There's plenty of weapons still on offense. You're talking about Likely and Andrews and Flowers and Bateman and Henry and Justice Hill. The offensive line's a big question, but there's still enough players on offense to help Cooper Rush and have a manageable game and put up some points. Will their defense do anything? Will they stop them? Because that defense on Sunday didn't look like they could stop anybody. It looked like if they played Patrick, they could have played 4 more quarters, and I'm not sure they would have forced Patrick Mahomes to get off the field on any of that. They just had no answers for anything. So, you're right. This team will show you a lot on Sunday with how they respond. The body language wasn't great on Sunday. It really wasn't. I think the reality was setting in. I don't think players can believe where they are right now at this course of the season and how poorly they've played the last couple of weeks. So they have a chance to do something about it. The most concerning thing about this team is they haven't punched back yet. And Ravens teams punched back in the past. And, nobody's used to seeing them get blown out. The score wasn't a blowout 2 weeks ago, but the play on the field was pretty one-sided. They need to show some fight here. And, it's a challenge this week for the coaching staff to get them ready, but that's why they get the big bucks. They really need Harbaugh to lead the way this week.
Good place to stick a pin in it, I think, guys. Houston and Baltimore coming up on Sunday. It's a Week 5, 1 o'clock kickoff at the Bank. We hope that a week from tonight, we're talking about how they do the unthinkable going up against a really well-coached team. And to Jeff's point, I think we can all agree the Rams are probably top 5, top 7, somewhere around there in terms of degree of difficulty across the league this year. So appreciate Sleeper for the continued opportunity to partner up. They are powering this channel. If you use the promo code HMA, you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Appreciate Sleeper. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out. We've got one closing super chat from Colin. He says, Owe needs to step up. Robinson is the only motor on that defensive line.
I completely agree, and Owe has not gotten enough attention in the first 4 weeks. I feel like no one ever talks about him, and where's he been except when he gets an unblocked pressure? He's really good at running to the quarterback when no one's in front of him.
Yeah. And what
the Ravens have 3 first or second round edge rushers, and through 4 games they have 0 sacks combined.
And I'll put one closing thought because I was the leader of the Mike Green hype train, self-admittedly. Mike Green taking all this heat when you're getting absolutely nothing from Owe, Ojabo, Isaac. He's hurt, but he's hurt again. That's the fundamental problem that's been created with this edge rusher group is the guys from previous drafts putting your rookie second-round pick in a position to have to start, sack the quarterback. Jared Verse won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year with only 4.5 sacks. Think about that.
And Cole, this Texans offensive line is not very good, correct?
No, they have good. They have, I wouldn't say good. They have decent guard play. Titus Howard's pretty decent. They have Arianti Arce, but the interior is worse. So I might have to be careful with how I say this. The interior is similar or worse than ours.
That's a very careful way of putting it. That's probably smart. So, all right, guys. Well, we appreciate you for hanging out tonight. As always, the things that go a long way for our channel's growth, liking the video, subscribing, hitting that notification bell for future notifications of when we're going live, which is 8 o'clock Eastern, Tuesdays moving forward this season. We will be back a week from now, and then all of a sudden, it's bye week. So we look forward to hanging out with you guys on Tuesdays in the coming weeks. For Jeff Zaribek and Cole Jackson, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Tuesday, September 30th edition of The Collective. We'll catch up with you guys next week. Have a great week. Enjoy Week 5 as much as you can. We'll talk to you soon.